The story of Mesoamerica does not begin with pyramids. It begins with silence, a continent covered not by cities, but by endless forests, volcanic ridges, and forgotten coastlines where the first flickers of civilization emerged, long before the Maya, long before the Aztec, and long before recorded memory dared to speak their names. Before the towering pyramids of Teotihuacan broke the horizon, before the divine kings of Tikal carved their genealogies into stone, and before the eagle warriors of Tenochtitlan marched beneath obsidian banners, there existed a world far older, one rarely mentioned in textbooks, yet whispered in myths, encoded in ruins, and buried beneath the slow heartbeat of the earth. It was a world where knowledge seemed to appear too suddenly, as if inherited rather than invented. A world where stone cities emerged in places where no civilization should have existed yet. A world built by hands we no longer recognize. Archaeologists speak of cultural development, of gradual accumulation, of slow and steady evolution. But the ruins scattered across the jungles of Mesoamerica tell another story. One of abrupt brilliance, unexplained mastery, and civilizations that rose to impossible heights before quietly fading into the forest, leaving no clear trail behind them. And so we are left with questions. Questions that unsettle tidy timelines and whisper of forgotten ages. Who truly built Mesoamerica? How many civilizations lived, died, and vanished before the Maya and the Aztec carved their kingdoms into the land? And why do so many monuments across this region seem older than the cultures credited for them? Tonight, we journey back, far back, beyond official dates, beyond the limits of accepted history, into a time when the first architects of the Americas shaped their world with knowledge that still challenges modern minds. Our path begins where the textbooks end, in the shadows before the known civilizations, when the continent was a blank canvas, waiting for the first sparks of human genius. Picture the scene, a slow cinematic glide through dense rainforest, mist curling around ancient trees that have witnessed millennia. Somewhere beneath the canopy, stone lies hidden, massive blocks arranged with purpose, geometry, and intention, their creators long erased by time. The air hums with mystery, as if the land itself remembers something we do not. This is the world before Mesoamerica, a world older than our maps, older than our myths, a world where the first great builders walked. But to understand the full magnitude of this forgotten past, we must move forward in time, toward a city so monumental, so precise, so impossibly aligned with the heavens that even the Aztec, when they discovered it, believed it was not built by humans at all. A place they called the city where the gods were born, Teotihuacan. Yet as grand as the name sounds, it only raises a deeper question. If the Aztec didn't build it, then who did? And this is where our journey truly begins. Teotihuacan rises from the valley floor like the bones of an ancient giant. From above, its geometry is so precise, so deliberate, that it feels less like a city and more like a blueprint, a plan executed by minds who understood something deeper about the earth, the sky, and the mathematics connecting the two. Yet when the Aztec arrived in the Valley of Mexico around the 14th century, they found this immense metropolis already abandoned, already silent, already carrying the weight of centuries. They stood before the Pyramid of the Sun, one of the largest structures ever built in the ancient world, and they did not claim it. They did not say, "Our ancestors made this." Instead, with humility and fear, they called the place Teotihuacan, the city where the gods were born. Because to them, only beings beyond human could have engineered something so vast. Imagine that moment. A powerful civilization, armed with warriors, priests, and a cosmology stretching back generations, standing in awe before ruins left by a culture they had never heard of, never imagined, and could not explain. In their eyes, The builders were divine. They had to be. No other explanation fit the magnitude of what stood before them. But the questions remain. Who were those builders? When did they live? And why did they vanish? As we walk the Avenue of the Dead, the grand boulevard stretching more than a mile, we begin to understand why Teotihuacan challenges modern timelines. The entire complex is aligned with astronomical precision. The pyramids of the sun and moon mirror the stars of Orion's belt, just as the pyramids of Giza do on the other side of the world. Its orientation is offset by exactly 5 degrees from true north, matching key solar cycles known to cultures far older than those traditionally placed in Mesoamerica. And beneath the grand facades, hidden chambers reveal even stranger clues. In 2015, archaeologists discovered a tunnel beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. Inside, they found pools of liquid mercury shimmering like a reflective underworld river. Mercury is not a decorative material. It is toxic, difficult to extract, and incredibly rare in ancient contexts. Its presence here feels intentional, symbolic, and advanced, almost alchemical. Other artifacts found in the tunnel contained pyrite, fool's gold, arranged in such a way that torchlight would have created the illusion of stars glowing beneath the earth. A manufactured cosmos, hidden below a manufactured city. What kind of society constructs a celestial simulation underground? Perhaps Teotihuacan was not merely a city. Perhaps it was a model, a machine, a cosmogram designed to merge earth, sky, and ritual into one massive system. Some researchers argue that the entire complex functions like a vast astronomical instrument. The distances between major structures correspond to planetary cycles. The proportions inside the pyramids encode constants related to timekeeping, and the city's layout reflects the movement of celestial bodies with such sophistication that it rivals modern observatories. Yet we are told that the builders of Teotihuacan had no writing system, no metal tools, and no wheel. So how did a supposedly primitive culture design something that modern architects still struggle to fully explain? And why does the city bear no record of its creators? No inscriptions, no royal tombs, no founding myths, no faces? It is as if the builders erased themselves intentionally, or as if they belonged to a society whose memory was wiped out long before the Aztecs set foot in the valley. Even the city's population remains a mystery. At its height, Teotihuacan may have held more than 100,000 people, making it one of the largest cities on Earth during its time. But who were they, and where did they go? The sudden abandonment of Teotihuacan is one of archaeology's great enigmas. The city did not fall gradually. It was burned, deliberately, its temples scorched, its monuments shattered. Internal conflict, foreign invasion, a ritual ending? No one knows. What is certain is that after the flames died, the builders disappeared forever. And this silence, this total absence of identity, fuels a larger question, one that stretches beyond ruins and into the realm of cultural memory. Why did the Aztec, a civilization that claimed lineage from mighty ancestors, insist that Teotihuacan belonged to beings more ancient than themselves? What did they remember, or what had they been told? As we move deeper into the timeline, the patterns become clearer. Civilizations appear suddenly, fully formed, with advanced astronomy, advanced architecture, and mythologies hinting at knowledge inherited from an earlier age. Teotihuacan is only the first piece of this larger puzzle. The next piece lies deep in the Maya world, a culture whose brilliance also seems to emerge without a visible developmental path. Because while Teotihuacan astonishes with its architecture, the Maya astonish with something else entirely, their intellect. A calendar more accurate than the one used today, mathematics rivaling university-level systems, astronomy so advanced it predicted eclipses centuries into the future. Where did this knowledge come from? And why does it appear suddenly, almost explosively, as if carried forward from a forgotten source? To uncover that mystery, we now leave the Valley of Mexico and move east, into the jungles of Guatemala and the Yucatan, where another civilization rose, flourished, and then vanished with equal enigma. But the deeper we go into Maya territory, the clearer it becomes that their knowledge was not born in isolation. It was inherited, and what they inherited may point directly to a civilization far older than history dares to acknowledge. The Maya world awaits. The road into the Maya world is carved through dense jungle, a living cathedral of vines, shadows, and distant echoes. The deeper you travel, the more the forest begins to reveal fragments of an astonishing civilization, stone temples rising like islands in a green sea, stairways swallowed by roots, and observatories leaning toward the sky as if listening for messages from the stars. And within these ruins lies one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world, the sudden explosive brilliance of the Maya. Historians tell us the Maya civilization flourished from around 250 to 900 CE, but the truth is more unsettling. When Maya cities begin appearing in the archaeological record, they are already advanced. Their writing system is already complete. Their mathematics is already sophisticated. Their astronomical knowledge is already precise. There is no slow climb, no experimental phase, no gradual evolution. It's as if their civilization stepped onto the stage fully formed, carrying knowledge that shouldn't have existed in the ancient world. Let's begin with the numbers. The Maya developed a positional numeral system long before Europe adopted one. They independently invented the concept of zero, something so mathematically advanced that it didn't appear in most cultures until more than 1,000 years later. Their calendar system, combining the Tzolk'in, the Hab, and the long count, is so accurate that even modern astronomers marvel at its precision. How did a culture without metal tools, without the wheel, without domesticated beasts of burden, produce a mathematical and astronomical framework that rivals, and in some ways surpasses, what others achieved with far more resources? Consider the Maya observatories. At Chichen Itza stands El Caracol, a circular tower aligned with key celestial events. Through its narrow openings, priests tracked Venus, the solstices, and lunar cycles with extraordinary accuracy. The Maya recorded Venus's synodic cycle with an error of less than 1 day over centuries. Modern calculations confirm it. Their numbers were nearly perfect. But how did they achieve this without telescopes? Their architectural acoustics reveal another layer of sophistication. At Chichen Itza's Temple of Kukulkan, a single clap creates an echo resembling the chirp of a quetzal bird, a species sacred to the Maya. The effect is not symbolic coincidence. It is engineered, designed, intentional. But perhaps the most haunting mystery lies not in their knowledge, but in their disappearance. One by one, Maya cities were abandoned. Some slowly, others abruptly. Tikal, Palenque, Copan, Caracol, great kingdoms that collapsed or emptied out, leaving behind towering monuments swallowed by the forest. There is no single explanation, no unified theory. Scholars speak of drought, warfare, resource depletion, but no event perfectly fits the pattern. And the Maya themselves left few clues, as if they preferred silence over explanation. It's almost as though something happened, something disruptive, something sweeping, that pushed entire populations to leave their cities behind. Not destroyed, not burned, but simply left. As if someone had pressed a button, ending a chapter of their civilization unexpectedly. Yet their knowledge did not vanish. It continued in fragments, preserved by scribes, priests, and oral traditions. And in those fragments lies a troubling idea repeated across Maya cosmology. The world has ended before, and it will end again. They spoke of cycles, eras, suns, periods of time that rise and fall like breaths of the universe. This mirrors the beliefs of the Aztec, the Olmec, and even cultures across oceans and continents. Why do so many ancient societies share this idea of cyclical time? Why do they speak of floods, fires, darkness, and renewals as if describing memories rather than myths? And what makes the Maya even more enigmatic is that many of their legends speak of earlier teachers, figures who came from distant places, bringing knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, mathematics, and cosmic order. These beings were neither kings nor gods in the modern sense. They were intermediaries, instructors, civilizers. Who were these instructors? And what civilization taught the Maya, and perhaps many others, before history began recording their stories? The Maya never claimed they invented their knowledge. They insisted it was passed down. In their texts and oral traditions, they refer to earlier ages, earlier peoples, earlier builders, a civilization before the Maya, before the Olmec, before the ones we know. And slowly, piece by piece, the puzzle begins to align. Teotihuacan, abandoned before the Aztec. The Maya, arriving with knowledge already complete. The Olmec, creating monumental art with techniques no one can replicate. And across all of them, the same pattern. A sudden rise, an unexplained shift, a disappearance, a rupture in the timeline. The Maya world leaves us with more questions than answers. But their legacy leads us toward one of the most mysterious figures in Mesoamerican lore, a being revered across cultures, remembered by different names, yet always described in strikingly similar ways. A tall figure, bearded, light-skinned, arriving from the sea, bringing knowledge and order, and disappearing with a promise to one day return. His name echoes through centuries, through stone carvings and whispered myths, Quetzalcoatl. And to understand the roots of Mesoamerica's forgotten history, we must now follow the trail of this enigmatic teacher, the god, the king, the priest, or perhaps the last survivor of a civilization far older than we can imagine. The story of Quetzalcoatl begins now. To understand the deepest mysteries of Mesoamerica, we must follow the footsteps of one figure who appears everywhere, across centuries, across cultures, across kingdoms, separated by mountains, jungles, and oceans of time. His name is Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, but his story is far older, far stranger, and far more universal than most people realize. The Aztec envisioned him as a god of wind, wisdom, and creation. The Maya called him Kukulkan. The Toltec remembered him as a great teacher. The Olmec carved symbols that may represent the earliest form of his myth. And in all these depictions, in all these oral traditions, one detail echoes again and again. He was not like the others. He is described as tall in a region where the average height was much shorter. He is described as bearded among cultures that did not commonly grow beards. He is described as light-skinned in a population that was not. He arrives from the east, from the sea, bringing knowledge, order, mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, and laws. Knowledge that appears suddenly, as if delivered, not developed. Who was this figure? Was he a ruler, a priest, a prophet, or was he a messenger of something much older, a shard of a civilization that flourished before the recorded histories of Mesoamerica? In Toltec tradition, Quetzalcoatl was a real king, Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl, who ruled the ancient city of Tollan. Yet the legends say he did not merely govern, he transformed the people. He introduced new forms of agriculture, reformed religious practices, restructured calendars, and brought a new era of peace. His reign is remembered like a golden age, an age of clarity and enlightenment. But golden ages never last. The myths tell us that Quetzalcoatl was eventually forced to leave. Some say he was tricked by a rival deity. Others say he departed willingly, promising to return. Some stories say he sailed off on a raft of serpents, disappearing beyond the horizon. Others suggest he immolated himself, rising into the sky as the morning star. Yet his influence did not die. His legacy became a cultural backbone across Mesoamerica. His symbol, the feathered serpent, spread from temple to temple, kingdom to kingdom, preserved in carvings, ceramics, and architecture. But the deeper we look, the more the story begins to resemble something far older than the Toltec or the Aztec. Similar figures appear in cultures across the world: the Viracocha of the Andes, the Oans of Mesopotamia, the Thoth of Egypt, the Manu of India, all described as outsiders bringing knowledge after a great catastrophe, often appearing in the aftermath of floods, fires, or cosmic upheaval. Why do so many ancient cultures, separated by oceans, languages, and continents, share the same archetype? Where does this figure originate? Why does he always appear after destruction, not before? The Olmec, the oldest known advanced culture of Mesoamerica, may hold a clue. Their colossal heads, carved from basalt, depict faces that do not match the features of local populations. Some appear African, some Asian, some almost Polynesian. They portray a diversity that suggests contact or influence beyond their region, or perhaps the remnants of a far older population. And throughout Olmec art, the feathered serpent appears. Centuries before the Maya or the Aztec inscribed it in their own mythologies. Was Quetzalcoatl a memory carried across ages, a preserved echo of an ancient teacher? Or was he something else entirely? Perhaps the last survivor of a forgotten civilization that once thrived in the Americas before the rise of the cultures we know. The Maya spoke of earlier ages destroyed by catastrophe. The Aztec told of 4 worlds lost before ours. Even the Popol Vuh, the sacred Maya text, speaks of instructors from previous worlds, beings who could speak and see everything, beings who taught the earliest humans before withdrawing into the sky. And here lies the most intriguing element, the promise. Quetzalcoatl promised to return. This belief shaped the destiny of empires. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, some Aztec priests initially thought the prophecy had been fulfilled. The resemblance was superficial, and the hope was tragic, but it reveals the power his myth still held after more than 1,000 years. Yet what if the prophecy was not about a literal return, but the return of knowledge itself? Knowledge once entrusted to humanity, lost through cycles of destruction, and rediscovered each time civilization rises again. As we investigate deeper, we discover that Quetzalcoatl's teachings were deeply tied to cycles of time, cosmic rhythms, and the idea that humanity's story moves in great, repeating eras. This brings us to one of the most shocking aspects of Mesoamerican cosmology, a worldview rooted not in myth, but in memory, a memory of cosmic war, a memory of destruction, a memory of worlds born and worlds erased. This is the Aztec vision of time, a vision that may contain echoes of events older than their civilization and older than history itself. And that takes us to the next chapter, the cosmic war of the Aztec. To understand the Aztec, you must abandon the modern idea of time as a straight line. In their world, time was alive, time was circular, time breathed, collapsed, and was reborn. According to their cosmology, humanity does not live in a single history, but in a sequence of worlds, each destroyed, each replaced, each carrying the memory of the last like a faint echo across ages. This belief was not mere mythology. For the Aztec, it was a record, a warning, a cosmic pattern. And every temple, every ritual, every stone calendar carved into the fabric of their civilization served as a reminder that the universe itself is unstable, that creation and destruction walk hand in hand. They spoke of 5 suns, 5 eras of existence. The first sun ended in jaguars, devouring the people of an early world. The second sun ended in hurricane winds that tore the land apart. The third sun collapsed in a rain of fire, scorching the earth. The fourth sun drowned beneath an endless flood. And the fifth sun, the one we inhabit now, will end in motion and earthquakes. This cyclical cosmology mirrors stories told by the Maya, the Olmec, and countless cultures across the planet. Floods, fires, darkness, global resets. Why do so many ancient civilizations, from Mesoamerica to Mesopotamia to Polynesia, preserve memories of catastrophic cycles? Archaeology might say these are metaphors, symbolic tales, or cultural inventions. But the Aztec didn't treat them as symbolic. They treated them as historical fact. Their priests studied the sky obsessively, convinced that cosmic cycles governed the fate of humanity. They believed a celestial war raged constantly, a battle between forces of creation and destruction. They saw eclipses not as natural events, but as moments when the sun itself was under attack. And they understood their role as guardians of cosmic balance, performing rituals not out of superstition, but out of duty to prevent the return of chaos. What is most striking is that the Aztec did not claim ownership of this knowledge. They said it was inherited, passed down, given to them by beings from earlier ages, older civilizations that watched the stars, charted the heavens, and survived the previous destructions. Where did this knowledge come from? Who recorded the cycles? And how far back does this memory truly go? Consider the Aztec sunstone, the so-called calendar stone, which is not a calendar at all but a cosmological diagram. At its center is Tonatiuh, the sun, surrounded by the symbols of the four destroyed worlds. Around him is a ring of days, astronomical markers, and references to cosmic forces. But beneath the ritual symbolism lies a deeper layer, one that encodes astronomical cycles lasting thousands of years. This is not the product of a primitive society. This is the work of people who tracked celestial movements with extraordinary precision, people who understood precession, solstices, planetary cycles, and long-term astronomical rhythms. The Aztec believed they lived in a cosmological countdown, not in fear, but in acceptance. Their worldview was not nihilistic. It was cyclical. They believed creation always follows destruction, that every collapse is a doorway to renewal. And this belief shaped the entire structure of their society, from their temples to their urban planning to their rituals of sacrifice. But this raises a deeper question. Why did they think the world had ended multiple times? Where did they get these memories? And why do their stories match the destruction myths of distant cultures like the Greeks, the Hindus, the Sumerians, and the ancient Egyptians? What if these myths are not metaphors, but ancestral memories of real cataclysms, events that reshaped continents, collapsed civilizations, and nearly erased humanity? The Aztec believed the fifth sun, the current world, was fragile, temporary, subject to forces beyond comprehension. They saw themselves as living on the edge of a cosmic cycle nearing its end. But the most curious part of their cosmology lies not in their predictions, but in their sources. They claimed that this knowledge was not discovered by the Aztec. It was inherited from earlier civilizations, long vanished, civilizations whose ruins stand silent in the jungles and highlands, their creators erased by time. Civilizations like the Toltec, like the Maya, like the Olmec, and all of these point to something deeper, a civilization that preceded them all, a civilization capable of tracking catastrophic cycles, mapping the heavens, and surviving global resets, a civilization whose memory flows through the myths of Quetzalcoatl, through the geometry of Teotihuacan, through the mathematics of the Maya, and through the cosmology of the Aztec. As we step into the next chapter, the pieces begin to form a pattern, one that archaeologists hesitate to acknowledge, yet one that the ancient people themselves insisted was true. There was someone before them, a world before their world, a civilization before civilizations. To uncover that forgotten chapter, we must now follow the clues scattered across the Americas, clues that whisper of a lost age. The search for the civilization before the civilizations begins now. The deeper we follow these clues, Teotihuacan's impossible geometry, the Maya's sudden genius, the Aztecs' cosmic memories, the more a single pattern emerges, a pattern that refuses to disappear no matter how many times historians try to sweep it aside. Every culture points backward. Every tradition gestures toward something earlier. Every myth whispers the same unsettling truth. Mesoamerica inherited its knowledge. It did not originate it. But if that is true, then the most important question is no longer, how did the Maya learn mathematics? Or who built Teotihuacan? The real question becomes, from whom? Across Mesoamerica, the fingerprints of an older world appear like ghostly signatures. Consider the Olmec, often called the mother culture of the region. Their colossal stone heads, carved from basalt transported across great distances, show craftsmanship far surpassing anything expected from a supposedly emerging society. They sculpted jaguar-human hybrids, celestial symbols, and intricate glyphs, suggesting a symbolic system far older than most scholars admit. And yet, the Olmec themselves spoke of inheriting traditions. Their myths refer to ancient teachers, sky watchers, and culture heroes whose names have been lost. Even they, the first, claim to descend from an earlier people. The deeper we look, the older the trail seems to grow. Now consider the astronomical alignments scattered across the continent. Teotihuacan's layout matches stellar configurations thousands of years older than the site itself. Maya temples align to solstices and equinoxes with a precision that suggests inherited methods, not experimental ones. Even Olmec sites like La Venta and San Lorenzo align with cardinal directions using knowledge far beyond what early societies should have possessed. Were these alignments coincidences, or were they remnants, echoes, of an older mapping system, a forgotten geodetic grid that once spanned continents? Then there are the materials. Teotihuacan contains mica imported from more than 2,000 miles away. Some ancient Mesoamerican artifacts show advanced geopolymer techniques that resemble modern materials science more than primitive masonry. The Olmec created perfectly polished mirrors from magnetite and hematite, materials that require sophisticated knowledge to shape. Such precision does not appear suddenly, it is taught. But the evidence grows even stranger when we turn to global parallels. The concept of cyclical time appears in Mesoamerican cosmology, Hindu yugas, Greek ages of man, and Sumerian king lists. Flood myths appear in the Popol Vuh, in Andean legends, in Mesopotamia, in Polynesia, and in almost every ancient culture. Great instructors, described as tall, pale, bearded, or serpentine, appear in legends from Peru to Egypt to the South Pacific. Why do these myths mirror each other so closely? Why do they echo across oceans, across millennia, as if describing shared events? Perhaps because they are not myths. Perhaps they are memories. Perhaps they are the cultural residue of a world that existed before the end of the last ice age. Between 12,000 and 10,000 BCE, Earth underwent catastrophic climate shifts. The Younger Dryas impact event, massive flooding, volcanic eruptions, rising sea levels, and the end of a global ecosystem dominated by megafauna. Entire coastlines vanished underwater. Whatever societies existed near those coasts would have been destroyed, their knowledge scattered, their survivors few. Could it be that Mesoamerica's earliest myths are memories of this lost era? The Maya believed previous worlds ended in floods. The Aztec described eras destroyed by fire and darkness. The Olmec left symbols of cosmic serpents, potential metaphors for celestial bodies or cyclical destruction. And Quetzalcoatl, the mysterious civilizer, appears right after a great catastrophe in some traditions, bringing order to a broken world. If we assemble these fragments, they paint a haunting picture, a civilization predating the Maya, the Aztec, the Olmec, and even the first settlement layers recognized by archaeology. A civilization that survived a global cataclysm and passed fragments of its knowledge to later peoples, not as rulers or ancestors, but as wandering instructors, guardians of memory, and preservers of cycles. This ancient society may have understood astronomy at a depth modern cultures are only beginning to rediscover. They may have tracked precessional cycles lasting tens of thousands of years. They may have mapped Earth's ley-like energy lines, patterns reflected in the alignments of sacred sites worldwide. And they may have encoded their understanding in myth, architecture, and ritual so that future civilizations could rebuild after destruction. But if this lost civilization existed, its presence would not be confined to stories. It would leave behind a map, a hidden network of clues woven through the geography of the ancient Americas. A map that connects cities separated by thousands of miles. A map structured not around territory, but but around knowledge, a map that mirrors the Earth itself. This brings us to one of the most intriguing enigmas in Mesoamerican archaeology, the hidden geometric pattern linking Teotihuacan, Tikal, Palenque, Chichen Itza, Monte Alban, the Olmec heartland, and even the legendary island city of Tenochtitlan. A pattern so precise, it defies coincidence. A pattern that suggests the ancient Americas were once unified, not politically, but scientifically, under a single worldview inherited from a forgotten past. And that brings us to the next revelation, the hidden map of ancient America. When we look at Mesoamerica on a modern map, we see borders, mountains, jungles, and rivers. But when the ancient builders looked at this land, they saw something entirely different. An invisible grid, a network woven across the earth, linking cities across vast distances through geometry, astronomy, and sacred alignment. This hidden map is one of the most astonishing patterns in ancient American history because it suggests intentional design on a continental scale. Let's begin with the most iconic sites: Teotihuacan, Tikal, Palenque, Chichen Itza. Each one is separated by hundreds or thousands of miles. Each one was built by different cultures. Each one rose at different times. Yet, when their locations are plotted on a globe, something extraordinary happens. They fall into geometric relationships that cannot be dismissed as coincidence. Teotihuacan aligns with Tikal through a nearly perfect diagonal across Mesoamerica, a line that intersects ancient trade routes, mountain passes, and sacred landscapes. That same line, extended southward, touches Copan and the Izapa region, areas associated with early Maya development. Extended northward, the line approaches the central regions of the Toltec and later Aztec world. Palenque and Monte Alban reveal another alignment, one tied to solar cycles. The angle between these cities matches the sunrise on key dates in the Mesoamerican ceremonial calendar. Monte Alban itself was constructed on a flattened mountaintop, as if the builders wanted to place their city on a deliberate marker within a pre-existing grid. Chichen Itza forms a triangle with Tikal and Teotihuacan, a triangle whose sides mirror astronomical ratios tied to Venus, the planet deeply associated with Quetzalcoatl and Maya cosmology. These alignments are not minor. They are exact within degrees that would require advanced surveying knowledge. Then there are the Olmec sites: San Lorenzo, La Venta, Tres Zapotes. Their placement follows patterns matching magnetic north, Earth's rotational axis, and even latitudes associated with significant astronomical events. La Venta, in particular, sits on a precise alignment that mirrors the layout of later Maya and Aztec ceremonial centers. It is as if the Olmec were the first to place markers on a grid that later civilizations expanded and refined. But the most striking pattern emerges when we include Tenochtitlan, the island capital of the Aztec Empire. Although built long after the fall of Teotihuacan and centuries after the rise of Maya civilization, its placement mirrors the earlier grid. Its orientation matches solar cycles, and its position aligns with sacred mountains revered for thousands of years. The city did not emerge randomly. It was founded where it was meant to be, according to ancient prophecies that may have originated from far older sources. Now imagine this: a map stretching across the entire region, not drawn on parchment, but embedded in the landscape. A map using mountains as markers, rivers as boundaries, and pyramids as coordinates. A map that may encode astronomical knowledge, ritual pathways, and geophysical energy lines, echoing traditions from China, Egypt, and India, where sacred sites follow similar patterns. Could these alignments be the result of chance? Perhaps one or two, but not dozens. Not when they follow consistent angles tied to solstices, equinoxes, and planetary cycles. Not when they match sacred geometry found in cultures continents apart. And not when ancient mythologies repeatedly mention a time when the gods laid out the world. Who were these gods? The Aztec believed they were beings who constructed the universe in an earlier age. The Maya spoke of divine architects who measured the four corners of the earth. The Olmec left sculptures of figures holding tools or tablets, as if documenting instructions. Their myths speak of sky watchers and star teachers. Could these be metaphors for an earlier civilization that mapped the land with extraordinary precision? A civilization that understood geodesy, astronomy, and geometry long before the rise of the cultures we know? If such a civilization existed, its survivors would have left behind more than legends. They would have left behind structures, massive ones, designed to withstand time. And that is exactly what we find. Pyramids, observatories, temples, and cities placed as if following a plan older than any single culture. The alignments also suggest something else. Communication, not in the modern sense, but an exchange of knowledge, ideas, and methods across centuries. Civilizations that supposedly rose independently may have been inheritors of the same forgotten blueprint, and the implications are staggering. What if the great cities of Mesoamerica, separated by time and culture, were all part of a single inherited knowledge system? What if they were nodes on an ancient energy network, or astronomical stations designed to track cycles far larger than human lifetimes? What if the builders were following a map handed down from a world that no longer exists? As we move deeper, the connections only grow stronger. This hidden map is not just geographical, it is symbolic. It speaks of a philosophy shared by the ancient Americans, that the earth is alive, that the heavens speak through cycles, and that humanity must align itself with cosmic patterns. But if this was true, if the ancient world operated on a knowledge system inherited from a forgotten past, then the final question becomes unavoidable. What happened to that earlier civilization? Where did it go? Why did it disappear? And why do its fingerprints remain everywhere except in our historical records? To answer that, we must descend even further into the ruins, into the myths of floods, fires, and cosmic resets that echo across the Americas. The next chapter uncovers the cataclysms remembered by the ancient world. Every ancient civilization remembers a moment when the world almost ended. Some recall floods so massive they swallowed mountains. Others speak of skyfire raining upon the earth, turning forests to ash. Some recount an age of darkness when the sun disappeared. These are not isolated myths. They are global memories, echoed in Mesoamerica with startling clarity. For the Maya, the Popol Vuh describes earlier creations destroyed by water, by fire, and by cosmic imbalance. For the Aztec, the four suns preceding our era ended in jaguars, storms, flames, and floods. Even the Olmec left symbols of serpents descending from the sky, possibly metaphors for comets or celestial objects that cause devastation. But these stories do not simply speak of destruction. They speak of survival, of rebuilding, of knowledge saved through catastrophe. And buried beneath mythic language lies something even deeper: the timeline of Earth itself. Around 12,800 years ago, the planet experienced the Younger Dryas event, a sudden, violent return to glacial conditions. Temperatures crashed. Ice sheets melted in catastrophic bursts. Ocean levels surged. Massive wildfires spread across continents. Megafauna vanished. Human populations plummeted. Whatever cultures existed along ancient coastlines would have been erased almost instantly. Modern science confirms these events. Ancient myths remember them, and Mesoamerican civilizations encode them. Why? What did they know that we are only rediscovering now? Consider the Maya long count calendar. Its starting date, August 11, 3114 BCE, is not the birth of their culture. It is a symbolic reset point, marking the beginning of the current world age. This date does not correspond to the rise of Maya society. Instead, it echoes a cosmic cycle, a memory they believed came from before their time. The Aztec, too, did not claim to invent their cosmology. They said it was given to them by older peoples who themselves inherited it from even earlier ones. This means every generation preserved fragments of a story stretching back thousands of years before recorded history, and the story speaks of a world destroyed. When we examine the ruins of Mesoamerica through this lens, another pattern emerges. Many pyramids were built in layers, new temples constructed over older ones, which themselves were built over even older structures. years. This creates a vertical record of rebuilding, as if each era sought to preserve sacred architecture that existed before. At Teotihuacan, ground-penetrating studies reveal layers far older than the city's classical period. Beneath the Pyramid of the Sun lie tunnels that appear almost primordial, carved long before the surface pyramid was erected. At Tikal, early construction phases show astronomical alignments different from later buildings, suggesting that knowledge shifted over time, perhaps because earlier teachings were only partially remembered. At Monte Alban, the oldest structures are oriented differently than later ones, indicating a change in worldviews, calendars, or inherited cosmological systems. It's as if each civilization was trying to remember something fundamental, something lost. But the question is, what exactly was lost? Some researchers propose that ancient myths may be symbolic narratives of geological events, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, or sudden climate shifts. Others suggest they could be cultural memories of migrations forced by rising sea levels. But none of these explanations account for the precision with which ancient societies tracked cosmic cycles. They weren't simply reacting to disasters, they were predicting them. The Maya tracked Venus with extraordinary accuracy, as if they believed its movements were tied to world-altering events. The Aztec considered eclipse cycles dangerous, moments when cosmic forces clashed. The Olmec built symbols that appear to represent precessional movements, the slow wobble of Earth's axis over 26,000 years. How did ancient peoples without telescopes or metal instruments understand cycles lasting longer than any human lifetime? Who taught them to track the movements of the heavens with such devotion? And why were they so obsessed with the idea that history repeats itself? Perhaps because they witnessed a cycle end, or perhaps their ancestors did, and the memory was so profound that it became the foundation of all later civilizations. Picture this: a world before the Maya, before the Olmec, before the first cities rose from the jungles. A world where early societies observed a sky filled with celestial chaos, comets streaking, temperatures crashing, oceans rising. In the aftermath, survivors scattered. Some retreated inland. Others climbed to higher ground. Some carried knowledge with them: astronomy, mathematics, building techniques, calendars. This knowledge, passed through generations, eventually resurfaced as the foundations of Mesoamerican civilization. In other words, the brilliance of the Maya, the precision of the Aztec, and the monumental engineering of the Olmec may not be the beginning of something, but the end of something older. If this is true, then the great ruins of Mesoamerica are not the first chapter of American history, but the middle chapter of a far longer story, one that stretches back to a forgotten age of human achievement. And this idea brings us to a profound realization. The ancient Americas were not simply isolated civilizations. They were inheritors of a legacy, the remnants of a global memory that survived Earth's last great upheaval. But if an earlier civilization existed, its presence would not be limited to cities and myths. It would be etched into the land itself, in grids, alignments, pathways, and patterns that reflect an understanding of Earth energy that modern science is only beginning to explore. Which leads us to the next revelation: the forgotten science of ley lines and energy corridors woven through ancient America. To the ancient peoples of Mesoamerica, the Earth was not inert. It was alive, breathing, pulsing, vibrating with invisible forces that shaped landscapes, weather, and destiny. They believed mountains were guardians, rivers were arteries, and valleys were channels of spiritual and cosmic energy. And as strange as this sounds to modern ears, it is undeniable that many of the greatest ancient sites on Earth, whether in Mexico, Peru, Egypt, Turkey, or China, align along mysterious pathways known today as ley lines. These are not literal lines etched into the ground. They are patterns, geometric corridors linking sacred sites across vast distances, often matching astronomical, magnetic, or geophysical anomalies. In many parts of the world, these lines converge at places where ancient civilizations built their temples, pyramids, observatories, and ceremonial centers. Why? Because these locations were believed to be points of power, intersections where Earth's natural energies intensified. And Mesoamerica is no exception. Take Teotihuacan. Its orientation, 15.5 degrees east of north, does not match true north, but it matches magnetic north from a specific period thousands of years before the city's classical era. Why would its builders orient a city to a magnetic field that no longer existed in their time, unless they inherited knowledge from an earlier civilization that built according to an ancient magnetic model? Now extend your view outward. That same orientation aligns with several other sites. La Venta in the Olmec heartland, Monte Alban in Oaxaca, certain early Maya ceremonial platforms, even parts of Chichen Itza's older foundation phases. It is as if these cities were placed along energetic corridors recognized across millennia. But energy alignment isn't just about city placement, it's encoded in architecture itself. Consider the iconic pyramid at Chichen Itza, El Castillo. Twice a year on the equinoxes, the setting sun creates the illusion of a serpent of light slithering down its terraces. This is not coincidence. The builders engineered the pyramid with uncanny precision to create a living manifestation of the feathered serpent. Kukulkan, the Maya equivalent of Quetzalcoatl. Temple acoustics also reveal intentional energy manipulation. At the base of El Castillo, a clap transforms into a chirp, replicating the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. At Teotihuacan, certain platforms amplify sound in patterns resembling heartbeats. Some Maya temples produce standing wave harmonics when chants are performed inside them. These acoustic phenomena suggest that ancient architects understood resonance, the way sound waves interact with geometry. Resonance is a form of energy, and energy is the key to understanding these ancient pathways. Now consider the volcanoes. Mesoamerica is a land of fire. Its mountain ranges formed by tectonic collisions that create electromagnetic anomalies, geothermal pockets, and unusual magnetic readings. Ancient people revered these mountains as living beings, often building their cities within sight of their volcanic guardians. Teotihuacan is aligned with Cerro Gordo. Tenochtitlan faced Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl. Monte Alban overlooks the Sierra Madre interior ranges. Tikal stands in a basin surrounded by low-slung ridges that echo its temple configuration. Each of these mountains sits on geophysical hotspots where Earth's natural fields intensify. So what did the ancients understand about Earth energy that modern science ignores? Perhaps the answer lies in myth. Mesoamerican stories speak of dragon lines, serpentine paths along which gods traveled, where cosmic forces entered the world. The feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, was not only a deity of knowledge, but a symbol of energy flowing between sky and earth. This imagery mirrors Chinese concepts of the dragon lines, the energetic veins of the land. It mirrors Andean sequoia lines, the sacred paths radiating from Cusco. It mirrors the English ley lines identified in prehistoric landscapes. Cultures separated by oceans and continents use the same metaphor. Serpents, dragons, snakes, creatures that twist and flow like energy itself. Why would so many unrelated civilizations choose the same symbol? Perhaps because they observed the same invisible patterns. And here is where the mystery deepens. When you plot the major Mesoamerican sites onto a global map, many fall into alignment with sacred centers across the world. Giza, Göbekli Tepe, Angkor, Easter Island. These alignments are not perfect, but they are uncanny, hinting that the builders of ancient America may have shared knowledge with cultures far beyond their borders, or that they inherited a global understanding from a civilization predating them all. Imagine for a moment a world before the end of the last ice age, a world where small pockets of advanced knowledge existed, perhaps not globally connected by empires, but connected by necessity as survivors of catastrophes spread across continents. These survivors might have carried fragments of a unified geodetic science, later interpreted as mythic knowledge by emerging societies. Could this explain why the Maya suddenly possessed advanced astronomy? Why the Aztec retained cosmic cycles spanning thousands of years? Why the Olmec built monuments with magnetic anomalies embedded inside them? Why Teotihuacan's layout mirrors star maps older than the city itself? All these threads point to the same possibility. Ancient America was part of a far older human story, a story that began long before the Maya aligned their temples with the equinox, long before the Olmec sculpted colossal heads, long before the Aztec traced the movements of the heavens. A story that begins in an age before memory. But if this ancient energy knowledge was real, if these civilizations tapped into Earth's natural forces, then the next question is just as important. What were they using this energy for? Power, ritual, healing, communication, or something far more profound? To answer that, we must explore the heart of Mesoamerican architecture, the pyramids themselves. In the next chapter, we uncover the true purpose of the pyramids of ancient America. To the modern visitor, the pyramids of Mesoamerica appear as monuments, grand, silent, and immovable. But to the ancient world, they were not monuments. They were instruments, devices, machines built of stone, geometry, and intention. Machines designed to interact with the cosmos, with the earth, and with the very cycles of time that governed human destiny. This idea may seem extravagant, but once you look closely, the evidence becomes overwhelming. Let's begin with Teotihuacan, the most enigmatic of them all. The Pyramid of the Sun is not built of random stones. Its dimensions encode mathematical ratios tied to the Earth's orbit and the lunar cycle. Its base perimeter echoes the size of certain global monuments with uncanny precision, as if built according to a shared ancient measurement standard. And its placement is not arbitrary. It sits on a natural cave system, a womb of the Earth, suggesting ritual or energetic significance long predating the surface pyramid. Then, there is the Pyramid of the Moon, mirroring the silhouette of Cerro Gordo behind it, as if the builders were creating a dialogue between architecture and landscape. This practice is found in other ancient civilizations as well, such as Egypt's alignment of pyramids with natural plateaus and China's placement of tombs along sacred mountains. The Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent is even stranger. Beneath it flow tunnels, deliberately engineered spaces filled with pyrite dust, shaped to reflect and refract torchlight like stars in the underworld. And deeper still, archaeologists discovered pools of liquid mercury, something unknown in any ordinary construction. Mercury was symbolic of the underworld, of cosmic rivers, of the passage between realms. But more than symbolism, Mercury is conductive. It reacts to electromagnetic fields. It resonates. Was this purely ritual or functional? Were the pyramids designed as vibrational chambers, amplifying sound and energy? Could they have been built as frequency-based structures interacting with Earth's magnetic field? Across Mesoamerica, every major pyramid reveals similar patterns. Consider the Maya. At Tikal, Temple 4 stands taller than the forest canopy, its summit perfectly positioned to observe solstices and equinoxes. Temples I and II align through an east-west axis marking the sun's movement. Their stepped designs create shadows that correspond to specific astronomical dates. And beneath some temples lie earlier structures, stacked like layers of time, each preserving a fragment of inherited knowledge. At Palenque, the Temple of the Inscriptions contains an interior crypt shaped like a resonant chamber, with walls angled to amplify sound. It is as if the building itself was meant to speak, to send vibrations upward through its stones. The sarcophagus lid of Pakal is carved with a cosmic scene, showing a ruler ascending into the sky on what many interpret as a celestial craft. Whether symbolic or literal, the message is clear. These monuments were gateways between earth and the heavens. Chichen Itza offers even more evidence. El Castillo is a mathematical masterpiece. 91 steps on each side, plus the final platform, equal 365, the days of the solar year. The pyramid's height and base encode ratios tied to Earth's orbit. Its shadow serpent illusion on the equinoxes demonstrates precise astronomical engineering. The interior chamber, once containing the famed jade-covered jaguar throne, may have functioned as a vibrational center. Even more extraordinary are the acoustic effects. A single clap at the base creates a chirp perfectly matching the call of the Quetzal bird. A low shout at the top bounces back as a deep roar. These properties are not accidental. They are engineered. They show an understanding of sound wave dynamics surprising for a civilization without metal tools. The Olmec, too, built pyramids, massive mounds with aligned platforms that served as early prototypes for later constructions. Their sites contain magnetized stones, arranged in patterns that suggest deliberate manipulation of natural magnetic fields. Some Olmec artifacts show compass-like engravings, implying they understood geomagnetic orientation long before such instruments appeared elsewhere. This brings us to a profound realization. The pyramids were not mere temples. They were multi-purpose structures containing layers of meaning and function. They tracked celestial movements, sunrises, sunsets, equinoxes, solstices, lunar cycles, Venus cycles. They amplified sound, singing, chanting, ritual drums, creating resonant frequencies. They marked Earth's energy lines, serving as nodes on a geomagnetic grid. They encoded mathematical knowledge, ratios, constants, calendars, and celestial distances. They preserved mythic memory, depicting stories of creation, destruction, and rebirth. In a sense, they were living libraries. Libraries not of books, but of stone, light, sound, and geometry. But there is one more layer, one most scholars avoid discussing. Many ancient traditions claim pyramids were designed to influence human consciousness. Rituals performed inside them may have induced altered states. Their chambers may have been tuned to frequencies that amplified intention, prayer, or emotion. Their geometry may have been chosen to harmonize the human body with Earth's natural vibrations. This may explain why so many cultures, across oceans, built pyramids. Egypt, Sudan, China, Indonesia, Peru, Mexico, and the ones in the Americas show some of the most advanced acoustic and astronomical engineering of all. Were these civilizations communicating across vast distances? Were they inheriting a shared blueprint? Or were they rebuilding, generation after generation, the memory of a structure that once existed long before? The pyramids are more than monuments. They are keys to a forgotten worldview that saw Earth, sky, and consciousness as inseparable elements of existence. And if the pyramids were part of a global system, what exactly was that system preserving? To answer that, we must look not at buildings, but at stories. Stories carved in stone, encoded in myth, whispered across generations. Stories of beings who brought knowledge to humanity after the last great destruction. Stories of the forgotten builders. If the pyramids are keys, then the next question becomes unavoidable. Who placed the keys here in the first place? Who were the first to understand the energetic veins of the earth, the cycles of the heavens, the power of resonance, and the geometry that binds time to structure? The civilizations we know, the Maya, the Aztec, the Toltec, the Olmec, they all pointed backward. Their myths do not celebrate themselves as originators. They celebrate earlier beings, earlier instructors, earlier worlds. These forgotten builders appear in almost every Mesoamerican tradition, though described with different names, different symbols, different masks. The Maya spoke of the iguana people, beings with deep cosmic knowledge who existed before the current creation. The Toltec revered Quetzalcoatl, described not just as a god, but as an enlightened teacher. a bringer of laws, agriculture, timekeeping, and astronomy. The Aztec referenced Teotihuacan, a divine paradise where the first humans learned from gods who descended after the world's previous destruction. The Olmec left stone faces so distinct, so human yet so unfamiliar, that scholars still debate their origins. But beyond the names and symbols lies a shared concept. The earliest instructors were not like the people who remembered them. They were described as tall among populations known for shorter statures, bearded among cultures that rarely grew facial hair, pale or luminous-skinned in regions dominated by darker complexions, arriving not from nearby, but from the sea, from the sky, or from distant lands. These descriptions are consistent, so consistent that they demand attention. Take Quetzalcoatl. In the Toltec tradition, he was a historical figure, a priest-king who brought order, knowledge, and a new era of prosperity. But in the deeper mythic layer, he becomes a being of light, a cosmic traveler, a serpent that bridges earth and sky. Symbolic? Perhaps. But symbols are chosen for a reason. They encode memory. In the Maya world, Kukulkan carried the same attributes. He arrived unexpectedly, reorganized society, established priesthoods, taught astronomy, and then departed across the eastern sea, promising one day to return. The Popol Vuh describes the creators as beings who could see everything and speak everything, who crafted early humans and bestowed knowledge before stepping back. Even the Olmec, whose origins remain shrouded in enigma, depicted individuals with helmets, elaborate headdresses, and expressions of calm authority, as if representing revered founders or foreign teachers. Their colossal heads do not resemble the local phenotype, leading some researchers to propose contact with distant cultures or the remnants of a more diverse ancient population. What if these gods, teachers, and founders were not supernatural beings, but the last survivors of an earlier human civilization, one that collapsed during the great cataclysms at the end of the Ice Age? Imagine a world 12,000 years ago, rich with coastal settlements, flourishing cultures, and pockets of advanced understanding. As the ice melted, these civilizations would have been swallowed by rising oceans, 80 meters of water consuming land that once hosted millions. The survivors, forced inland, would have been scattered across continents. Their knowledge would have survived in fragments, mathematical constants, star cycles, agricultural methods, architecture, and stories encoded in myth. These survivors would have been few in number, distinct, physically different, marked by memory. To later societies rebuilding from catastrophe, they would have seemed supernatural, not because they were gods, but because they carried the intellectual legacy of a world now lost. This idea is not new. It appears in myths worldwide. In the Andes, the Viracocha arrived after a global flood. In Mesopotamia, Oans rose from the sea to teach humans. In Polynesia, the Atua guided early navigators. In Egypt, Thoth preserved knowledge through destruction and taught humans to rebuild. In India, Manu survived a great flood and carried the seeds of future civilizations. In North America, the Hopi remember the Kachinas, beings who helped humanity after the destruction of the previous world. The parallels are too widespread, too detailed, to dismiss casually. What if these instructors were remnants of a pre-cataclysmic society? A society with a sophisticated understanding of cycles, energy, geometry, and the heavens, knowledge accumulated over thousands of years before being nearly wiped away. This would explain the sudden appearance of advanced skills in early Mesoamerican cultures. It would explain why the earliest monuments show the greatest precision. It would explain the recurring descriptions of tall, bearded foreigners. And it would explain why myths place cultural founders immediately after a global destruction. The forgotten builders may not have been supernatural. They may not have been aliens. They may simply have been us, humans, like us, but from an older chapter of our story. A chapter erased by catastrophe and buried beneath rising seas. But if this is true, then one question becomes even more pressing. What knowledge did they try to preserve? What message did they encode in stone, in myth, in calendar systems, and in the very geography of ancient America? What warning or wisdom were they trying to pass forward across millennia? Because when we look carefully, a pattern emerges. One message repeated again and again. The world is cyclical. Civilizations rise and fall, and humanity forgets what it once knew. The ancient instructors seemed determined to prevent that forgetting. They built monuments meant to last ages. They aligned cities with cosmic cycles that repeat slowly but predictably. They carved myths that encode timelines of destruction and renewal. Their intention was clear. Remember. Remember what happened before. Remember what will happen again. And in the next chapter, we explore precisely what they wanted us to remember: the cycles of time and the countdown hidden in ancient calendars. If the forgotten builders wanted humanity to remember anything, it wasn't their names, it wasn't their cities, it wasn't their lineage. What they wanted preserved was far more important and far more unsettling: the pattern of time itself. Because in the worldview of ancient America, time was not a line but a wheel, and within that wheel lay a cosmic mechanism that determined when civilizations would rise and when they would fall. To understand this, we must begin with the Maya. Their calendar system is one of the most advanced ever created. 3 separate calendars interlocked like gears in a vast cosmic machine. The Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred cycle. The Hab, a 365-day solar year. The Long Count, a massive timeline that tracks epochs spanning thousands of years. Most people know the Long Count because of the 2012 cycle transition, but few understand what the Maya were truly measuring. The Long Count does not track political eras. It does not measure dynasties. It does not follow human events at all. It measures cosmic motion, the slow, majestic cycles of the Earth's wobbling axis, known as precession. Precession is a 26,000-year cycle that modern astronomers only fully understood in recent centuries. Yet the Maya encoded cross-sectional increments of this cycle with stunning accuracy. How? How could a pre-industrial civilization in the jungle, without telescopes, without metal tools, have calculated something that requires centuries of continuous measurements, unless they inherited it? The Aztec calendar, different in form but identical in principle, also tracks cosmic cycles, dividing reality into eras of destruction and rebirth. Each sun in Aztec myth aligns with a segment of a larger cosmological cycle, hinting that ancient peoples observed long-term patterns in nature and encoded them into mythology to protect the knowledge from being forgotten. The Olmec, the earliest known civilization in Mesoamerica, left artifacts showing early calendar symbols long before the Maya perfected them. Their numbering system hints at a base 20 mathematics mirroring later Maya innovations. Again, knowledge that appears too advanced too early, as if built on foundations laid much deeper in time. But the strange part is not the precision. It's the purpose. These calendars were not made to mark birthdays or organize agriculture. They were created to predict transformation. They tracked cosmic cycles believed to influence not only the heavens, but the fate of humanity. Eclipses, planetary alignments, solar crossings, and precessional milestones were seen as markers of coming change. Moments when the veil between worlds grew thin, when the forces of creation and destruction realigned. And here's where the pattern becomes truly haunting. The cycles recorded in Mesoamerican calendars match cycles recorded in Hindu Yuga timelines, Greek ages of man, Sumerian king lists, and even Egyptian astronomical lore. This implies a global memory, a shared recognition that humanity has passed through multiple ages, each ending in cataclysm. And the most ancient cultures warn that we are nearing another threshold. But what exactly did they believe triggered these resets? The Maya pointed to the movement of the sun through the galactic plane, a slow oscillation that modern astrophysicists have only recently modeled. They believed that when the sun aligns with certain cosmic regions, Earth becomes vulnerable to upheaval. The Aztec linked destruction to celestial battles, metaphors that some researchers interpret it as cometary cycles or increased solar activity. The Olmec appear to have tracked the movement of Venus, a planet with an extremely erratic orbit that can signal gravitational disturbances in the solar system. And all three cultures warned that when certain cycles synchronize, solar, lunar, planetary, precessional, the result is world-changing transformation. These are not superstitions. These are observations. Observations made over thousands of years. Observations that may have been given to them by people who lived through such events before. But here is the key. None of these civilizations claimed to discover these cycles. They all insisted they inherited them from earlier ages, ages destroyed before ours, which leads to an even more profound realization. The calendars were not warnings about the future. They were memories of the past. Encoded into stone, into myth, into ceremony was a message. This has happened before. It will happen again. Be ready. For the Maya, the end of a cycle was not the end of the world. It was the end of a world, a transition, a rebalancing, a moment when humanity either advanced or collapsed. So what were the ancient Americans trying to preserve? Not dates, not dynasties, not events. They were trying to preserve awareness, awareness of the cycles, awareness of the patterns, awareness of the forces that reshape civilizations, awareness of the great clock that governs both stars and societies, because if humanity forgets the cycles, it forgets how to survive them. The forgotten builders, the ones who lived before the Maya, before the Olmec, before all the civilizations we know, left clues so we would not be caught unaware when the next transition comes. But they left more than calendars. They left more than pyramids. They left more than myths. They left structures built to survive cataclysm, structures designed to endure fire, flood, earthquake, and time, structures that still stand today, waiting for us to understand their true purpose. And in the next chapter, we explore those structures, the ruins that predate the ruins, the megaliths beneath the megaliths, and the remnants of an age long forgotten. If the calendars preserved the memory of time, then the stones preserved the memory of existence. Across Mesoamerica, beneath temples and plazas, beneath layers of construction from later civilizations, lie structures older than the cultures that claimed them, megalithic remnants that whisper of a lost age. These hidden foundations are the puzzle pieces archaeologists rarely discuss, because they do not fit into any accepted timeline. To find them, you must look not at the towering pyramids or ornate carvings, but at the blocks beneath them, the deepest layers, the earliest phases, the stones, too large, too precise, too perfectly cut for the cultures traditionally credited with building them. Consider Teotihuacan. Most visitors see the city's classical facades, plaster, murals, and talud tablero design. But beneath this relatively recent architecture are basalt blocks, perfectly cut and arranged, showing a level of craftsmanship starkly different from later additions. Some of these buried stones appear far older, fashioned with techniques the Teotihuacanos themselves never used again. Then there is Tikal, a crown jewel of the Maya world. Archaeologists have excavated through temple layers and discovered earlier phases, structures whose masonry resembles neither classic Maya nor pre-classic designs. Some of the deepest stonework uses megalithic blocks carved with a precision that feels almost Andean, almost Egyptian, almost out of place. Why would the earliest layer be the most advanced? At Palenque, the story deepens. Beneath the famed Temple of the Inscriptions lie tunnels and chambers built with an architectural style that predates the temple above it. These substructures use larger stone blocks, smoother cuts, and more refined joints than the later Maya masonry. It is as if the Maya built atop a foundation they inherited, adapting the structure but unable to replicate its original engineering. Monte Alban, one of the oldest cities in Mesoamerica, sits on a mountaintop that was artificially leveled. But the earliest levels contain stonework far different from the Zapotec constructions above. Some stones are enormous, placed with an engineering confidence unexpected for the earliest phase of what should have been a developing society. Even more baffling is Chalcatzingo, an Olmec-influenced site carved into a mountain slope. Here, megalithic blocks and channels appear almost machine-cut, with clean, geometric lines that do not match the tools of any early Mesoamerican culture. The Olmec left behind colossal heads and statues, yes, but they also left behind stonework that feels lifted from another age. And then there is the cradle of Mesoamerica, the Olmec heartland. At sites like La Venta, San Lorenzo, and Tres Zapotes, the earliest constructions are the most precise. Gigantic basalt blocks transported from distant quarries, platforms built with interlocking stones, drainage systems cut from single pieces of rock. All of this at a time when most cultures worldwide were just beginning to form villages. The pattern is clear. The deeper you dig, the older the layers become. Yet the older the layers are, the more advanced the stonework appears. This is the opposite of what we would expect. Civilization, according to standard history, should progress upward, starting simple and becoming more advanced over time. But Mesoamerica shows the reverse. The earliest layers show the greatest mastery. Later layers show adaptation, imitation, and sometimes decline. It is as if the first builders knew exactly what they were doing, and the cultures that followed were simply trying to preserve or replicate what they found. This pattern is not unique to Mesoamerica. We see it at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, at Pumapunku in Bolivia, at the Sphinx enclosure in Egypt, and at megalithic sites across Europe and Asia. Everywhere, the oldest stonework is the most precise. And everywhere, myths say the same thing. We did not build the first structures. We inherited them. What we call prehistoric may not be primitive at all. It may be the last trace of a forgotten epoch, one that left its final messages in stone before Earth's great cataclysms erased everything else. Let's return to Mesoamerica and look at what these buried megaliths imply. First, they indicate that the first builders had advanced quarrying and stone-shaping techniques, even though we find no metallic tools. Did they use lost tools, lost methods, techniques passed orally but not in writing? Second, the precision suggests knowledge of geometry, mathematics, and architecture that would not reappear for thousands of years. How did early cultures know how to cut and place stones with such perfection? Third, the widespread pattern of building later structures on top of older ones suggests reverence. The newer civilizations believed these foundations were sacred, special, or connected to divine origin. Fourth, the megalithic layers appear to predate all known societies in the region, possibly extending back to the centuries after the Ice Age, when survivors of global cataclysms would have sought new places to rebuild. Fifth, some megaliths contain astronomical alignments that match sky positions not seen in several thousand years, implying their builders lived in a different celestial era. And finally, these ruins challenge the accepted timeline. They hint that advanced knowledge existed long before the Maya, long before the Olmec, long before the rise of agriculture in the region. So, who were these first architects? Perhaps they were the forgotten survivors of humanity's last great civilization, individuals who preserved fragments of science, astronomy, and engineering from a world destroyed by fire, ice, or flood. Or perhaps they were descendants of nomadic groups who inherited ancient knowledge from elders whose own origins stretch into the mists of prehistory. Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. The megaliths beneath Mesoamerica's ruins were not built by chance. They were placed deliberately, aligned deliberately, carved deliberately, by hands guided by purpose and memory. Purpose we can still feel today. memory encoded in the foundations of civilizations. But memory alone is not a message. To discover the message the ancient builders left behind, we must now turn to the symbols carved into their stones, symbols that reveal not just history, but prophecy. In the next chapter, we decode the symbols and glyphs that preserve the forgotten message of the ancient world. If the megaliths are the bones of the ancient world, then the symbols carved into them are the veins, carrying meaning, memory, and warning across thousands of years. Unlike languages spoken and forgotten, unlike stories passed orally and distorted by time, symbols possess a special durability. They survive, they endure. And in Mesoamerica, these symbols hold a message that reaches beyond the Maya, beyond the Aztec, beyond the Olmec, into the era of the forgotten builders who came before them. Across the ancient Americas, the same motifs reappear in wildly different cultures. Serpents, jaguars, spirals, cosmic trees, celestial birds, twins, portals, and sky bands. These are not random artistic flourishes. They are pieces of a code, a visual language that encoded cosmology, astronomy, cycles of time, and even historical events that occurred long before these civilizations rose. Let's begin with the most iconic symbol of all, the feathered serpent. In the Maya world, he is Kukulkan. Among the Aztec, Quetzalcoatl. To the Toltec, he was a teacher king. To the Olmec, he appears in early iconography as a sky serpent associated with water, creation, and the movement of stars. Why a serpent with feathers? Why this combination of sky and earth? Because the feathered serpent symbolizes the connection between realms, the flow of energy between heaven and world, the descent of cosmic knowledge into human hands. It is the perfect symbol for ancient instructors who came from afar, carrying lost knowledge to the survivors of cataclysm. Then there is the cosmic tree, also known as the world tree, or Waka Chan. It appears in Olmec carvings, in Maya inscriptions, in Aztec codices, and even in North American and South American traditions. It is the axis mundi, the axis of the world, representing the connection between the underworld, the earthly realm, and the heavens. But deeper still, it encodes the three planes of cosmic motion: the galactic plane, the solar plane, and the planetary plane. The world tree is not merely symbolic, it is astronomical. It represents the galaxy itself, the Milky Way, arched across the night sky. Many ancient cultures believed that cosmic cycles were tied to the galaxy's orientation and that world ages began and ended when the sun aligned with the galactic center. How did civilizations without telescopes understand such grand cycles, unless they inherited them? The spiral is another key symbol, found everywhere from Olmec pottery to Maya murals to Aztec sculptures. Spirals record motion, hurricanes, galaxies, water vortices, time cycles. A spiral is a visual representation of how the universe moves, and its presence in the earliest layers of Mesoamerica suggests that ancient people understood motion not as linear, but as rotational, the foundation of cyclical time. Then we have the jaguar, the most sacred animal in the ancient Americas. Jaguars symbolized shamans, rulers, and beings who could walk between worlds. To the Maya, the jaguar sun traveled through the underworld at night, only to rise again in the morning. To the Olmec, the were-jaguar motif shows humans merging with jaguar features, possibly representing lineage from earlier beings or transformation through shamanic experience. But one symbol stands above the rest in its mystery and sophistication: the sky band. This intricate glyph appears across Maya stelae, linking symbols of stars, planets, and celestial order. It encodes patterns of precession, solstices, and equinoxes. It maps the movement of Venus, the planet the Maya watched with nearly obsessive precision. And embedded within the sky band are symbols showing cosmic destruction and renewal. The deeper you look, the more this ancient code begins to resemble an astronomical manual, a survival guide for navigating world ages. Another powerful symbol, the portal. Doorways, arches, cave mouths, serpent jaws. These represent entry points between dimensions. Some carvings depict divine beings stepping through these portals. Were these metaphors for consciousness or memories of actual migrations, perhaps by the forgotten builders who arrived after catastrophe? Consider the twin symbols found in Maya and Aztec lore, the hero twins of the Popol Vuh, the dual deities who battle forces of chaos in the underworld. Twins represent duality, light and dark, creation and destruction, cycles of rise and fall. Every culture in Mesoamerica emphasizes this duality because they believed reality itself operated on complementary forces locked in eternal balance. But among all glyphs and symbols, one stands out as the most important: the calendar glyphs. These are not simple day markers. They encode mathematical relationships that reflect planetary cycles, eclipse sequences, lunar periods, and the harmonics of Venus and Mars. The Maya did not just keep time, they measured resonance between celestial bodies. Their glyphs show that they viewed the cosmos as a harmonic engine with predictable outcomes. So what do all these symbols have in common? They encode knowledge of astronomy, cosmic cycles, earth energies, consciousness, duality, creation and destruction, the rise and fall of civilizations. And the greatest mystery, these symbols appear in their earliest forms with stunning sophistication. There is no learning curve, no developmental arc. The symbols appear complete, as if inherited, fully formed. This suggests one conclusion: the symbols, like the megaliths, came from the forgotten builders. They are fragments of a much older language, preserved by cultures who revered those who came before. A language not of words, but of cycles. A language designed to survive floods, fires, and collapses. A language that could be carried across ages intact. But symbols alone are not enough. To truly preserve memory across millennia, ancient peoples turned to something even more enduring: myth. Myths that seem like stories, but are actually encoded knowledge of past cataclysms and future events. And that takes us to our next chapter, the myths of Mesoamerica and the hidden science within them. Myth is the bridge between memory and survival. In the ancient world, myth wasn't entertainment. It wasn't fantasy. It was a coded transmission, a way for knowledge to endure long after writing decayed, long after cities collapsed, long after languages vanished. And in Mesoamerica, myth is where the forgotten builders speak the loudest. Every great story of the Maya, every cosmological cycle of the Aztec, every strange creature carved by the Olmec, beneath the surface of ritual and symbolism, there lies a scientific core. The myths are not just narratives. They are theories, models, frameworks, and warnings preserved through metaphor. Let's begin with the Popol Vuh, the Maya book of creation. It describes earlier worlds made of mud, wood, even light, worlds that were destroyed because they lacked balance, awareness, or the ability to remember the gods. At first glance, it sounds poetic, but look deeper and you'll see something else. Successive attempts, failed civilizations, cycles of creation followed by collapse. This is exactly what geologists and paleoclimatologists see when they look at Earth's history: fluctuating climates, mass extinctions, sudden resets. Could the Popol Vuh be a cultural memory of human attempts to rebuild after each collapse? Then there are the hero twins, Hunahpu and Xbalanque, who descend into the underworld to defeat the Lords of Death. Their trials mirror the movement of celestial bodies, eclipses, supernova events, passages of Venus and solstice alignments. Their descent into darkness, followed by a triumphant return, resembles the sun's nightly journey through the underworld and its rebirth at dawn. The myth records astronomical cycles through story. It teaches without diagrams. It preserves without equations. It is cosmic science disguised as narrative. Move to the Aztec. Their myths are dramatic, filled with gods tearing themselves apart to keep the sun alive. Yet beneath this drama lies a sophisticated understanding of stellar cycles. The 5 suns are not gods in the sky. They represent 5 cosmic eras, each ending in cataclysm: fire, wind, flood, darkness, jaguar. These symbols match geological and astronomical events, volcanic eras, megastorm cycles, global floods, impact winters, predator blooms, after collapses. Every sun is a destroyed age. Every god is a force of nature. Every sacrifice is a metaphor for renewal. The Aztec weren't predicting doom, they were remembering it. The Olmec, the earliest known civilization in Mesoamerica, left fewer written myths, but their iconography hints at profound knowledge. Their jaguar-human hybrids likely represent the merging of realms, shamanic states, altered consciousness, or transitions between worlds. Their baby-face figurines, some argue, depict early humans rescued or created after the destruction of a previous age. Then there's the serpent, arguably the most important creature in Mesoamerican myth. Serpents represent cycles, time, the Milky Way, the flow of cosmic energy, DNA-like patterns, and the rise and fall of civilizations. The feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, brings knowledge after catastrophe, then disappears, promising to return in the next cycle. This is not a god. This is a memory of someone who came after destruction, someone who helped humanity rebuild. Where else do we see this pattern? In Sumerian myth, after the flood, the Apkallu, the seven sages, brought knowledge to mankind. In Egypt, after the flood of darkness, the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, taught agriculture and writing. In India, after each yuga, a Manu leads survivors to safety and helps restore cosmic order. In the Andes, the god Viracocha emerged after the flood, teaching architecture, agriculture, and astronomy. These myths are separated by oceans and thousands of years, yet they tell the same story: a world destroyed, a small group of survivors, knowledge preserved, civilization reborn. Is this collective imagination or collective memory? Mesoamerican myths go even further. They reference celestial triggers for world catastrophes. The Maya believed that when the sun aligns with the galactic center at certain cycles, great transformations occur. The Aztec believed the heavens periodically war with each other, causing the collapse of human eras. Even Olmec motifs show celestial serpents, possibly comets, descending toward Earth. The myths describe cosmic alignments, comet appearances, solar disruptions, geological upheavals, cycles of heating and freezing, massive floods, population collapse, and the rebirth of society. But these are not vague symbolic stories. Some narratives correspond precisely to events in the geological record. Massive floods at the end of the Ice Age, sudden global climate shifts, a possible cosmic impact around 12,800 years ago, volcanic eruptions, megastorms, rising seas. Mesoamerica remembered and encoded and preserved. And perhaps the reason these myths survived is simple. We were meant to remember them. The forgotten builders, whoever they were, experienced cycles of destruction firsthand. They survived them, and they passed down knowledge in the most indestructible format: myth. Because myth can survive when stone falls. Myth can cross generations when writing fails. Myth can transcend collapse when civilizations burn. But myths also contain something else: instructions. Instructions on how to survive, how to rebuild, how to align with cosmic cycles, how to preserve knowledge for the next world. And to find those instructions, we must examine the centers of authority in ancient America: the priesthoods, astronomers, shamans, and keepers of knowledge who guarded the old truths. In the next chapter, we reveal the secret societies of ancient Mesoamerica, the guardians of the forgotten knowledge. Every civilization rises on the shoulders of a small group of people, guardians who preserve knowledge too dangerous to forget and too powerful to reveal carelessly. In Mesoamerica, these guardians were not kings, not warriors, not merchants. They were the timekeepers, the astronomers, the scribes, and the priest-scientists who carried fragments of an older world. They were the custodians of the forgotten builders' legacy, but their role went far beyond ritual. They were mathematicians, observers of the heavens, interpreters of myth, architects of time. Their responsibility was profound, to ensure that humanity did not lose the lessons learned in the age before the age. To understand them, we must begin with the Maya priesthood, among the most sophisticated knowledge groups ever recorded. The Maya priests did not simply watch the sky, they measured it with obsessive precision. They tracked the motions of Venus, the Moon, Mars, and the Sun, with accuracy rivaling that of modern instruments. They recorded eclipse cycles spanning centuries. They calculated the synodic period of Venus with less than a single day of error over centuries of observation. How does a civilization without telescopes or metal accomplish this? Because they didn't begin from zero. They inherited a tradition, a methodology, a system. The Maya timekeepers guarded codices, books of bark paper covered in glyphs so detailed they resemble astronomical treatises. Of the thousands of Maya books that once existed, only 4 survived the fires of conquest. What treasures were lost? What data? What calculations? What warnings? We can only imagine. Then there were the Aztec priests, inheritors of an even older tradition. Their sacred calendar, the Tonalpohualli, was not a simple calendar, but a ritual engine, a cosmic code aligning human activity with celestial cycles. The Aztec priesthood believed that knowledge was the only shield against cosmic chaos. They studied eclipse pairs, solar cycles, and Venus conjunctions with a seriousness that bordered on life or death urgency, because for them, it was life or death. If the cycles were misunderstood, if rituals were misaligned, if cosmic balance faltered, the world could fall into darkness once again. To the Aztec, the priesthood was the firewall between order and destruction. The Toltec, predecessors to the Aztec, were said to have produced some of the greatest sages the world had ever known. Tlamatinime, the wise ones, were philosopher astronomers who studied not only the heavens, but consciousness itself. Their goal was harmony between mind, earth, and sky. They believed the soul resonated with cosmic frequencies and that the universe was structured through sacred mathematics. Where did the Toltec learn this? Their myths point to a single source, Tollan, the sacred city, governed by Quetzalcoatl. But even the Toltec said their wisdom came from earlier ages. And then there were the Olmec, the first keepers of the flame. Their priest astronomers are the least understood, yet their influence is the most profound. They tracked solstices and equinoxes, built ceremonial centers aligned to cardinal directions, erected colossal heads possibly representing leaders or sages, and carved symbols hinting at advanced cosmology. Their society appears suddenly, fully formed, with monumental architecture, precise calendars, and a glyphic system that prefigures later writing. This is not the hallmark of a nascent civilization. It is the signature of one inheriting knowledge. Across all these cultures, the priesthoods guarded not just data, but dangerous data, knowledge of cycles that bring destruction. Imagine holding information that predicts the fall of worlds. Imagine knowing the signs of an approaching catastrophe. Imagine being responsible for ensuring future generations remember. This was the priesthood's burden, and yet this knowledge was not universally shared. It was kept in layers, circles within circles. An outer circle taught public rituals, seasonal cycles, and mythic interpretations. An inner circle guarded mathematical calendars, advanced astronomical tables, and precessional markers. A secret core preserved the oldest teachings, the ones inherited from the forgotten builders. These secret teachings included methods for tracking long cycles of cosmic motion, warnings about destructive eras, memories of previous world ages, instructions for reconstruction after collapse, symbolic codes linking architecture to celestial events, knowledge of Earth's energetic grid, ritual techniques to maintain cosmic harmony, and prophecies of future transformations. The priesthoods became living repositories of the old world, walking libraries who carried the fire of knowledge from one age to the next. But their power came at a price. Knowledge is difficult to preserve across collapses. When droughts struck, when warriors invaded, When kingdoms fell, the keepers of knowledge became the last defenders of a world view that stretched back thousands of years. Some fled, some hid their codices, some carved warnings into stone, others transmitted knowledge through stories, metaphors, and rituals. This is why myth survived, why calendars survived, why symbols survived, why pyramids survived, why alignments survived. Because even when kingdoms fell and temples crumbled, the priesthoods ensured the message continued. But what exactly is that message? What were they trying so hard to preserve? What truth did they believe humanity absolutely must not forget? Across Maya, Aztec, Toltec, and Olmec traditions, the message appears again and again. The world operates in cycles. Civilizations rise and fall. Cataclysms are inevitable. Only knowledge allows survival. And perhaps the deepest layer, this cycle will end one day, and we must be ready. Which raises the next question. What signs did the ancients believe would precede the next great shift? What markers did they leave for future generations? What changes in the heavens, in the earth, or in society did they consider warnings? To answer this, we must examine the final coded messages left in stone, myth, and mathematics. In the next chapter, we explore the prophecies, the predictions of change that echo across the ancient Americas. Prophecy is not the prediction of the future, it is the memory of cycles. To the ancient civilizations of Mesoamerica, prophecy was not mysticism. It was science expressed through metaphor. It was astronomy woven into myth. It was geology clothed in poetry. And above all, it was a warning. What has happened before will happen again. Across the Maya, Aztec, Toltec, and Olmec worlds, the same prophetic message repeats, carved in stone, recorded in codices, and preserved orally long after their cities fell. These prophecies were not born from fear. They were encoded to help future generations see the signs that precede the next great shift, the next turn of the cosmic wheel. To understand those signs, we must begin with the Maya long count. Despite popular misunderstandings, the Maya never said the world would end in 2012. What they said was something far more sophisticated. A cycle ended and another began. But what triggered those cycles? What determined when they began and ended? The Maya astronomer priests believed that Earth's fate was tied to celestial motion, especially the precessional cycle of roughly 26,000 years. They understood that the sun periodically aligned with the Milky Way's central region, a moment they considered a cosmic reset point. This alignment, invisible to the naked eye as a center, becomes symbolically powerful when viewed across millennia. It marks a moment when cycles synchronize, solar, galactic, planetary, creating a window of transformation. The Maya called such transitions world renewals, not destruction, transformation, not annihilation, rebirth. But transformation of what? Civilization, consciousness, climate, all of the above. When these cycles aligned in the past, the Maya believed great events unfolded. Floods, fires, migrations, cultural rebirths. Modern geology, surprisingly, supports some of this. Massive floods around 11,000 BCE, abrupt warming and cooling cycles, volcanic events, and rapid sea level rise. If the Maya inherited memory from survivors of those catastrophes, their prophecies make startling sense. Now, look at the Aztec prophecies. The Aztecs saw history as a series of suns, 4 destroyed, 1 surviving, but unstable. The 5th sun, our current age, was believed to be temporary and fragile. They said the 5th sun would end in motion, earthquakes, upheavals, the shaking of the world's foundation. To them, earthquakes symbolized cosmic realignment, not random events, but the Earth responding to celestial forces. Interestingly, modern science confirms that Earth's rotation, magnetic field, and tectonic activity are influenced subtly by solar cycles. Solar maxima and minima can alter climate patterns. Gravitational interactions between Earth, Moon, and planets influence tectonic stress. Ancient cultures did not model this with equations, but they observed correlations across centuries. The Aztec weren't predicting doom, they were recording a pattern, and they believed humanity would face another shift when the cycles converged again. The Toltec prophecies add another piece. They warned of an era of confusion, disconnection, and forgetting, an age when humanity would lose its awareness of the cycles, become consumed by material chaos, and abandon harmony with nature. Only after this age of forgetting would a new era of knowledge begin, one sparked by remembering the ancient teachings. Their prophecies say that a time would come when the sky would become filled with fire without heat. Some interpret this as lights, electricity, or technologies. Voices would travel across long distances without breath, communication technologies, and the world would be connected by threads, networks, trade, or global communication. To the Toltec, these signs were not the end, but the midpoint of a cycle, before humanity rediscovers its deeper connection to earth and sky. But perhaps the most enigmatic prophecies come from the Olmec, passed indirectly through later cultures. Some Olmec carvings show beings emerging from caves or underworld realms, sometimes carrying objects resembling tablets or tools. These are not depictions of ancestors. They represent beings returning after darkness, bringing knowledge to help humanity rebuild. This ties directly to the oldest Mesoamerican theme. Knowledge returns when the world is ready. And that brings us to the most powerful prophecy of all, the return of Quetzalcoatl. Contrary to colonial distortions, the return of Quetzalcoatl was not about a physical being descending from the sky. It symbolized the return of knowledge, consciousness, balance, and the wisdom of the forgotten builders. The prophecy foretold a time when humanity would again understand the cycles, recognize the sacred geometry of Earth, and awaken to truths obscured by ages of darkness. Quetzalcoatl's return meant the restoration of cosmic understanding, the rebirth of ancient science, the rediscovery of the lost timeline, the remembrance of the forgotten civilization. The prophecy was not about a man. It was about enlightenment. And here is where all the ancient prophecies converge. They say humanity passes through alternating states, light and dark, order and chaos, knowledge and ignorance. And the shift from one state to another always mirrors cosmic cycles. These shifts are not punishments. They are opportunities. Every destruction is followed by renewal. Every collapse is followed by new growth. The ancients were not warning of doom. They were teaching us to prepare. Prepare for transitions in consciousness. Prepare for shifts in climate. Prepare for changes in society. Prepare for the cyclical heartbeat of the universe. The forgotten builders left their knowledge encoded in stone so it would not be erased. Their descendants, the Maya, the Aztec, the Toltec, the Olmec, protected that knowledge through myth, science, and ritual. And their prophecies were not about fear, but about remembering who we are. But prophecy is not the end of the story. It is the bridge to something deeper. The destiny the ancient Americans believed awaited humanity. In the next chapter, we explore that vision. The future humanity was meant to reclaim. The ancient civilizations of Mesoamerica were not obsessed with the past. They did not study cycles, map the heavens, or carve stone for nostalgia. They did it because they believed humanity had a future, a destiny that could only be fulfilled if we remembered where we came from, why civilizations fall, and how they rise again. In their worldview, time was not a trap. It was a ladder. Each cycle was a rung. Each destruction was an invitation to evolve. And each rebirth offered humanity a chance to step closer to its potential. According to Maya sages, the current world is not the final one. It is a chrysalis stage, a period of forgetfulness before awakening. They believed humanity would one day rediscover its origin, its place in the cosmos, and its connection to forces far beyond material existence. This was not mysticism to them. It was inevitability. To the Aztec, the age of the fifth sun, the world we inhabit, was an age of testing. They said humanity would reach a point where it must choose between living in harmony or falling into chaos. This moment, they believed, would arrive when the cycles converged and the signs in the skies returned. What signs? Shifts in climate, unusual solar activity, disruptions in Earth's magnetic field, societal fragmentation followed by global unification, rapid acceleration of knowledge, technological breakthroughs that mimic divine abilities, a return of ancient wisdom resurfacing in unexpected ways, and above all, they believed humanity would enter a period where the veil of forgetfulness would thin. Memories, coded in myth, stone, and symbol, would resurface. People across the earth would begin asking the same questions. Who were we? What came before? What is our purpose? To the Aztec, this collective curiosity was not random. It was destiny. The Toltec took this vision even further. They believed humans were beings of potential trapped in cycles of illusion, but the cycles themselves were not the problem. The problem was forgetting that they were cycles. The Toltec taught that once humanity remembered the patterns, people would begin to dream consciously, shaping reality with intention instead of fear. They foresaw a time when humans would awaken to their inherent connection with Earth's energy, the stars above, and the cycles that govern existence. They believed humanity would stop searching outward for meaning and begin reconstructing the ancient knowledge from within. They even had a name for this transformation, the return of Quetzalcoatl, not a person, but a state of mind, a re-emergence of higher awareness. To them, Quetzalcoatl represented the human being perfected, balanced between intellect and heart, science and spirit, earth and sky. When humanity reached this state collectively, the next age would begin. But the Maya offered the most detailed vision of humanity's future. Their prophecy was not of destruction, but of alignment, a rebalancing of energies on Earth and in human consciousness. They believed that future generations would rediscover the ancient astronomical sciences, understand their place within cosmic cycles, and rebuild the world with greater harmony. They predicted a renewed fascination with ancient civilizations, breakthroughs in understanding human origins, global interest in protecting Earth, new sciences based on energy, resonance, and geometry, a merging of ancient knowledge with modern technology, the return of a unified human identity, and the rise of a new world age, born not from collapse, but from awareness. This was the Maya dream, a civilization capable of thriving in alignment with cosmic order. And remarkably, many of their predictions resemble our current era. Across the world, ancient knowledge is resurfacing. Lost cities discovered by LiDAR, hidden pyramids emerging from the rainforest, long-lost codices being decoded, and archaeological timelines being rewritten. Simultaneously, humanity is experiencing global reconnection, something the Maya and Toltec foresaw. Technology has linked nations, cultures, and information in ways that echo the ancient idea of a unified world grid. People study meditation, energy, astronomy, and ancient wisdom with renewed passion. Questions once dismissed as fantasy now drive serious research. And climate instability, the very phenomenon ancient prophecies warned about, has become one of the defining challenges of our time. We are living inside the cycle they predicted, caught between imbalance and renewal. The ancients did not fear this moment, they expected it, and they prepared for it. They built pyramids that would last until the next world age. They carved myths to guide future generations. They encoded star maps for people who would one day rediscover the sky. They left calendars that chart the heartbeat of cosmic motion. They whispered the message again and again. Remember. Remember who you are. Remember where you came from. Remember that cycles rise and fall, but humanity endures. Remember that knowledge must be preserved, not erased. Remember that the forgotten builders are part of your story. Remember that destiny is not predetermined, it is earned. In the ancient view, humanity's destiny is not destruction, it is awakening. The next age, the sixth sun, the new cycle, the rebirth era, begins when humanity reclaims its memory. But there is one final piece to this story, one last echo from the ancient world that ties everything together. It is the vision of a civilization that came before, the mysterious ancestors whose knowledge flowed into the Maya, the Aztec, the Olmec, and all who followed. To complete this journey, we must reconstruct that forgotten civilization, its world, its science, its fate. In the next chapter, we reveal the final synthesis, the lost civilization that gave rise to Mesoamerica. What kind of civilization could have seeded the knowledge of the Maya, the Aztec, the Toltec, and the Olmec? What kind of world could have produced instructors remembered for thousands of years? And how advanced must a society be for its echoes to survive across entire cycles of destruction? To answer this, we must piece together every fragment left behind, ruins, myths, symbols, alignments, calendars, and reconstruct the civilization that lived before history. This lost civilization cannot be found in a single city, a single ruin, or a single culture. It was not an empire. It was a network, a world connected through shared understanding rather than political unity, a world that existed during the late Ice Age, when sea levels were lower, climates were different, and human populations lived along coastlines, now swallowed by the ocean. Imagine a world of fertile plains stretching where the Gulf of Mexico is today, with rivers reaching farther than any modern map. Imagine land bridges, islands, and coastal corridors that allowed early cultures to thrive along shorelines long since erased. Imagine rising seas forcing migrations inland, into the highlands of Mesoamerica. This is where the forgotten story begins. The people of this lost world would have had generations, centuries, to observe the sky. With no light pollution and stable Ice Age atmospheres, they would have seen the heavens more clearly than we do today. They would have watched patterns, tracked migrations of stars, recorded the dimming and brightening of planets, and understood long-term cycles. Such knowledge does not require metal or modern instruments. It requires patience, continuity, a culture that values observation across thousands of years. This lost civilization likely understood precession of the equinoxes, solstice cycles, lunar standstills, planetary synodic periods, cometary appearances, Earth's magnetic anomalies, the geometry of astronomical alignments, proto-geodesy, mapping land using stars, energy nodes where Earth's forces concentrate, knowledge that resurfaced fully formed in the Maya world. They would have used this knowledge to plan settlements, placing ceremonial centers along energetic lines, near volcanoes, near rivers, near resonant mountaintops. These locations later became Olmec, Maya, and Aztec holy sites. This explains why so many Mesoamerican cities occupy places of unusual magnetic or geological significance. They were not chosen randomly. They were chosen because the older civilization already knew which locations mattered. And their architecture, though mostly lost to rising seas, would have influenced the earliest stonework in Mesoamerica. We see this in megalithic foundations with mysterious precision, anomalous stone blocks beneath later structures, early alignments that match celestial positions thousands of years older than the cities above, symbols representing cosmic serpents, axes, spirals, and world trees. Mythic references to earlier ages of humanity destroyed by cataclysm. All these clues point to a world shattered, its survivors scattering inland, their knowledge carried in memory rather than stone. These survivors would have appeared mysterious to the hunter-gatherer groups they encountered. They would have seemed tall, strange, foreign, just as the myths describe. They would have taught farming, astronomy, and the principles of stability. They would have become the gods, teachers, and founders of Mesoamerican lore. Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, Viracocha, Oan's, Thoth, Manu, the seven sages, the culture heroes that appear across the world after the flood. Different names, same pattern, same memory. This lost civilization was not mythical, it was historical. It simply existed at a time when Earth was dramatically reshaped and its cities were swallowed by the sea. Its temples, built on coasts, were erased. Its monuments, carved along shorelines, disappeared. Its knowledge survived only through myth and the teachings of survivors. Now consider the timing. Around 12,800 years ago, the Younger Dryas event struck, a sudden return to Ice Age conditions triggered by cosmic or geological forces. Temperatures collapsed, megafauna died off, coastlines vanished beneath floodwaters, human populations shrank. A global trauma. Those who lived through this would have seen the world break, literally and metaphorically. They would have understood that the cycles were far more powerful than any one civilization, and they would have sought to preserve what mattered most: knowledge. These survivors likely carried stone carving techniques, astronomical data, and cosmological frameworks into the interior of the continents. Over time, their bloodlines merged with local groups, but their teachings remained, evolving into the Olmec, Maya, and eventually the great civilizations of Mesoamerica. This explains the sudden sophistication of the earliest cultures. This explains the advanced calendars with no developmental stage. This explains the ancient alignments that reference skies thousands of years older. This explains the megalithic foundations beneath later temples. This explains the myths of gods arriving after a flood. This explains the memory of earlier worlds destroyed. This explains the shared knowledge across continents. The lost civilization was not an anomaly, it was the foundation, and its purpose did not end with its collapse. Its survivors encoded their wisdom so that future ages, our age, could learn from the cycles, prepare for the next shift, and rebuild with awareness instead of blindness. The knowledge survived because it was meant to. The myths survived because they were designed to. The ruins survived because stone remembers what people forget. And now, as modern humanity rediscovers ancient cities buried beneath jungle with LiDAR, as new archaeological findings challenge old timelines, as climate instability begins to echo ancient patterns, we are living in the exact moment these civilizations foresaw, the moment of remembering. But the story is not complete yet. One final chapter remains, the conclusion that ties together everything: the ruins, the myths, the builders, the cycles, and the warning. In the final block, we bring the entire journey home. At the end of every journey into the ancient world, one question always remains. Why? Why did the Maya carve their calendars into stone? Why did the Aztec build cities aligned to cosmic cycles? Why did the Olmec sculpt symbols that would echo through millennia? Why did the Toltec guard knowledge with such ferocity? What were they trying to say to us? To understand their message, we must return to the beginning, the jungle, the ruins, the pyramids, the myths, and look not at the details, but at the pattern. Because the ancient civilizations of Mesoamerica did not leave scattered fragments. They left a coherent system, a worldview, a map, a warning. Everything they built, every temple, pyramid, codex, myth, alignment, glyph, and prophecy points to one simple truth. Civilizations rise and fall, the earth changes, the sky changes, the cycles return, and only those who remember survive. This was the sacred knowledge of the forgotten builders. This was the responsibility of the Maya astronomers. This was the fear at the heart of Aztec cosmology. This was the mission of the Toltec sages. This was the foundation of the Olmec world. It was never about predicting the future. It was about recognizing the pattern. The ancients understood that human history is not a straight line. It is a spiral, a cosmic serpent twisting through time. Each turn of the spiral echoes the last, repeating themes with new variations. Flood, fire, darkness, rebirth, collapse, renewal, forgetting, remembering. And we are living right now in the space between forgetting and remembering. Look at the signs the ancients spoke of. Civilizations growing disconnected from nature. Rapid advances in technology without equivalent wisdom. Global communication networks forming a single web. Climate instability mirroring ancient upheavals. Humanity searching desperately for its origins. Ancient sites being rediscovered after lying hidden for millennia. All of these, they said, would unfold near the end of a cycle, not as punishments, but as invitations. Invitations to remember, because when civilizations forget the cycles, they build blindly, ignoring the forces that shape the world long before human beings walked upon it. They ignore the long rhythms of climate, of magnetism, of celestial motion. They forget what the ancient Americans tried to preserve with such determination. Knowledge is the only bridge across ages. Without it, every civilization becomes a sandcastle at the edge of the tide. With it, a new age can begin, not with collapse, but with awareness. So what exactly were they trying to teach us? They taught us how the earth moves, how the heavens shift, how cycles govern all life. They taught us to read the sky as a library of time. They taught us to align our cities, our structures, and ourselves with cosmic forces. They taught us that consciousness expands in cycles, just like civilizations. They taught us that myths are not stories. They are encoded instructions. They taught us that destruction is not an end, but a transformation. They taught us that the past is not lost. It is waiting beneath the surface. And above all, they tried to teach us this: humanity has been here before. Humanity has risen before. Humanity has fallen before. And humanity will rise again if it remembers. The ruins of Mesoamerica are not memorials. They are warnings. Teotihuacan speaks through its symmetry. Know the heavens. The Maya calendar chants in cycles. Know time. The Aztec sunstone roars through symbols. Know change. The Olmec megaliths whisper, know the past. The Toltec sages remind, know yourself. Because the destiny of humanity, the one the ancients foresaw, is not written in stone. It is written in consciousness. They believed that one day a future civilization, ours, would rediscover the forgotten world, that we would remember the builders who came before, that we would recognize the cycles returning, that we would awaken to our role not as victims of time, but as participants in it, that the return of Quetzalcoatl would not be a man descending from the sky, but the return of human awareness, a rebirth of wisdom. And as we stand today, decoding ancient texts, revealing buried cities, questioning old timelines, and seeking the truth behind myth, we are fulfilling that prophecy. We are remembering. This is the legacy of the ancient Americas, a message carried across ages, preserved in stone and story, waiting for the moment when humanity was ready to hear it. A message that says, do not fear the cycles, understand them, prepare for them, grow from them, rise with them, because the world does not end. It transforms. Civilizations do not die. They evolve. Humanity is not lost. It awakens. And so, as we close this journey through hidden timelines, forgotten builders, and civilizations built on the ashes of even older worlds, one final question remains. Are we ready to remember what they tried to teach us? The pyramids wait. The glyphs wait. The myths wait. The stars wait. And the memory of the world before Mesoamerica, the world that shaped all worlds after, waits for us to finally understand.